have a very simple philosophy in life. It's do the right thing um, for the right reasons to help people. And I grew up in kind of a unique atmosphere. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and I lived there until I was about 12. And my parents ran a mission home. And it wasn't like a registered home where with the state of Pennsylvania. My parents just opened up the doors, and they were connected to some different groups and people that wanted to change their lives. People that lived in abandoned houses and boxes and who lost parents. And they came and they lived in our house with us. When I was younger, I thought everybody had homeless people living with them. I just thought that's what Americans did. My parents, one time, gave away my bedroom, their son's bedroom, and I slept in a bathtub for a year. In a bathtub for a year, so that someone else could have my room because they didn't have a room. So, you know, I guess I've always had. I mean, I was a psychology major in college, and I've always had a fascination with helping people and doing the right thing. So, I mean, when it just comes to my beliefs, I'm not even sure I have any beliefs. I just really believe in doing the right thing and dedication and hard work. And really, at the end of the day, most of that, I'm sure I got a lot of it, most of it from my parents, but I attribute a tremendous amount of that to what I've learned in wrestling and martial arts, because the tens or the thousands of hours that I put in and really dedicated to training mostly. I mean, forget the performance part. That's just the success that you get from the work that you put in. You know, just all of that time that I put in, sweating in the gym, laboring, you know, bleeding, hurting. You know, I hated wrestling when I first couple years in college because it was so hard on me. You know, that's really, I guess, where a lot of my beliefs have been pounded into me. So I was a good football player, but you know, for me, it was just all about wrestling. Wrestled my whole life. Wrestled from the time I tell people I could wrestle from the time I could walk. You know, my dad knocked me down, and you know, we wrestled, and I mean, eventually it got serious. I mean, we used to break beds and crash into walls, and it was crazy at my house. But I had something inside of me that was uncontrollable, and I have a real hard time explaining what that something is. Like when I was a kid, you know how people say they could see red, like that was me. I hated to lose at board games. I would turn over board games because I didn't want to lose. I mean, it's kind of a, you know, I look back on it and I wish I could change that, but I can't. But as soon as I started to competitively wrestle, I lost that. I mean, and today, I'm not sure that there's many things that anyone in the world could do to me that would get me to lose my temper or get angry. I don't even know if it's possible. Like I try and think of some heinous or some awful things that could happen to me, and think, well, how could I use these hands to hurt someone violently? And I have a hard time saying yes to that. Like I just can't get angry like that. So it's kind of a real dichotomy or weird metamorphosis that I went through. Like I was this kid that just was out of control, and then as soon as I started to competitively wrestle, you know, that's where everything went to. Like, and you couldn't put me in a Taekwondo line. I was the kid that was bouncing off the walls, and I should have been on all kinds of drugs. That's not true. No kid deserves to be on those drugs. But I was the kid that if somebody else had me, they would have jammed drugs down my throat because they would have said, this kid's out of control. I mean, ADD. I mean, in school, my dad pulled me out of school for a couple of years because they wanted to label me and say I had these learning disabilities and you know, just hyperactive and things like that. And he said, no, you're not. You're a boy, and you know, and we're going to fix that with some discipline, with some good old American discipline. And we did, or he did, and straightened me out. But I dedicate a lot of it to wrestling because I never got in trouble or was jumping off the walls during wrestling season. You know, in junior high and high school, I was like the model kid because the teachers and everybody knew that at the end of the day, if they wanted to affect me, you know, just take wrestling away from him, and he was perfect. Honestly, I'm a competitor at heart. I love to put my physical attributes, my physical qualities to the test. I love to train my skill and hopefully be able to display it. I'm just a training nut, number one. I mean, if I miss a day or two of working out, you don't really want to be around me because I'm just not a nice person. I'm ugly. But the competitive, the competition for me is great. But at the end of the day, I really, at 37, I'll be 38 this year, I've pretty much accepted the fact that it's just my greatest hobby. You know, it's not, most of the money that I've ever won, I've given it away. You know, whether it's to my coach, more to my manager, I always find a charity. I tell people I don't really want money to fight. I mean, I just do it because I love to do it. I use the word fight, I try not to do that. But anyway, I just really enjoy it. I mean, it's just a passion of mine, and I really have no idea where it's going at this point, but we'll see. The word fighting, is to use violent, this is from your dictionary of mind, to use violent physical means such as blows, fists, or weapons to try and overpower someone. And it's got that word violent physical means in it. And there may be it may be your perception that you're watching violence, but it's not violence. I've never gone into a ring, and I know TV and pay-per-view, they take sound bites and they mash them together and it makes it look like these guys hate each other. But I would venture to say you could find only a handful of fights that when the fight is done, when the competition is done, that those guys bitterly hate each other, okay? I don't think you're gonna find it. And it's amazing when you watch these pay-per-view fights and they're like, this guy, I'm gonna kill him, and then afterwards they embrace. And you expect they should be spitting on each other, but they're not. These guys are athletes. These guys are competitors. These guys spent their lives training particular skill, or at least 10 to 15 years. So I don't like the word fighting. You know, it's like the early days of mixed martial arts. What was it called?
NHB.
NHB.
Yeah.
It was called No Holds Barred. It was the best thing they ever did for the sport. I always liked No Holds Barred because, you know, it was like manly to be a No Holds Barred fighter. You know, it taps into that primal, you know, core of a man. But when they changed it, I was like, mixed martial arts, that's never going to work. The best thing they ever did for the sport was change the name. Well, you can use the word fighting, that's okay, but it kind of tarnishes, to me, it tarnishes the, by definition, it tarnishes what we do because it implies violence. And to me, that's a danger, where I like to say, hey, man, I'm like a basketball player. I'm like a volleyball player. I'm just, you know, yeah, in my sport you get a cut, right? But it's just the way it goes. I could probably name a dozen guys over the last, since 1999, that I really don't care to train with because they're just a little bit out of control. But none of them are classy. I mean, there's no one I like to spar with more than George St. Pierre. I mean, and it's not because I get to say I get to spar with him, but when I spar with George, I mean, don't get me wrong, man. He's busted my nose a couple times, but he's not trying to take your head off your shoulders. He's trying to work on improving his skills in the gym. He's not trying to hurt you. Now, I know people get hurt and things happen and stuff like that, and I've seen some terrible injuries even in practice. It happens, but I really enjoy training with those guys that have a very high level, but you know what? Those guys are the most under control. When you get guys just trying to break into the ranks and they think that they're going into the gym to prove something to someone, and you're not trying to prove anything to anybody. You're just trying to get yourself better. Remember, success is not how good we are compared to other people. Success is how good we are compared to how good we could be. And when I think of George, I always think of that. I always think, you know, George doesn't compare himself to me taking him down. I mean, he's not happy about that, but, and yes, I have taken George St. Pierre down. Hooray me. But at the end of the day, George is always comparing himself to how good he could be, not to how good, you know, I am in the gym. So I try and use that as an example. But for the most part, I mean, there's some guys that are really scary to spar with, like Shane Carwin, because he's such a monster. And I'm in that light heavyweight class, so, you know, I get to get bumped up with him, which I love Shane. He's a great guy. I mean, you've never met a more docile, nice, soft-spoken guy when you're just sitting around, you know, going out to dinner with him or something. I mean, fantastic individual. But when he hits you, um, you know, you're going to see what your grandkids are going to look like, you know, because, and I don't even think he means it, you know. You know, a guy that's like John Jones, I mean, he's a scary guy to spar with because he's just so freakishly athletic. But at the same time, he's not going out there to kill you, which I think that's what makes these guys better all the time is they're really working on their skill. And they're not going to the gym thinking, I'm going to see how many guys I can put down and knock out today, you know. So I think that's pretty good, man. If I could only say one person a year on my list that I really wouldn't want to spar with again, that's pretty good, man. And I've sparred everywhere across the entire country, at the biggest and best gyms across the country, and not with the amateur guys, with the pro guys. I spent a lot of time with these guys outside. I mean, unfortunately, you know, I'm usually traveling, but like Rich Franklin, I mean, what a stand-up character. I mean, I've gone to church with Rich Franklin. How's that? You know, that's pretty cool. But all of these guys, I mean, yeah, I mean, Rashad Evans is a good buddy of mine. I mean, Keith Jardine's, I stayed at his manager's house when I go down there. You know, Keith loves going to movies, you know, so, yeah, I mean, and you'd be surprised at what their other interests are outside of mixed martial arts. I'd hate to rattle them off, but some of them would really surprise you. I wouldn't want to embarrass any of them if they ever saw this. I'm scared to death, you know. I remember being at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, you know, and saying, oh God, I hope some natural disaster happens and I don't have to go out there because I'm scared. But at the end of the day, you trust your training, you trust your coaches, they know you're ready, and you go out there and you just do what you've practiced doing. You don't do anything else, you just do what you practice doing. And hopefully it's more and your skills are better than what the other guys practiced doing. But I think you gotta turn on a little bit of a switch. But I can be honest with you, I've been in some competitions where I've done things, been like, oh man, I feel bad for that guy. You know, or a couple fights where I looked over at the guy and his face is all screwed up and thinking, oh man, I feel bad. And I do, you know, I always feel bad for the guy that loses, but then I think, oh wait, I don't want to lose. But I always feel bad for the guys. It's kind of weird. I know that people may think I'm weird for that, but you know, I don't want to see anybody lose. But I certainly don't want to lose either. So
Yeah.
I have some kind of psychological impairment, and I've been working on it for years. I just don't like to lose. And listen, I know the right things to say. I've sat on my sports psychologist's couch for years, who's one of the greatest. This guy's named Brian Kane. It's not about winning or losing, it's about the process, right? You cannot control winning and losing. It's an outcome. It takes care of itself based on performance. I know all of the right things to say, but when I play Candyland with my kids, I try and win. That's the kind of person I am. And it's from my dad, you know, he never let me win anything. You know, we played board games, he always beat me. It's wrong, and I've worked on it for years, but I like to win, and I can't unprogram myself from it. I've been working on it, and I tell myself all the time, it's not about winning and losing. It's not about winning and losing. It's about the process. Winning and losing is an outcome, right? It's a result. You can't control it. You just have to put into the competition, into the process. You got to put it into it. So for me, that's what it's all about, you know. And I feel like I would let people down. I mean, people, you know, like to follow me, but you know what the reality is? I train amateur guys. If any one of them loses, they never let me down. As long as they go through the process, they put the training in, I would never be disappointed in any of them. So I try and tell myself, well, people wouldn't be disappointed if you lost, Tom. But I've yet to convince myself of that. I'm just a guy trying to make myself better every day. I mean, that's about as plain and as raw as I can get, is that, man, I'm not a great guy. I'm not even a good guy. But every day I wake up and I try and say, Tom, what are you going to do to make yourself better and to make someone else better today? So that when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, I take the pillow test. And the pillow test is when you lay your head down, are you going to say, I wish I had, or are you going to say, I'm glad I did? And if you say, I wish I had, you failed the pillow test. And if you say, I'm glad I did, then you passed. But the thing is, I fail it all the time. But that just gives me the motivation to wake up the next day and to say, man, I wish I had. I'm going to do it tomorrow. And I really do. I mean, it's like bullying, man. People say to me all the time, oh yeah, I want to help, blah, 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 I'm going to do something. People don't do anything. They don't get up off their couch, off their patio, and actually do something. Everybody could go out and talk to 10 kids this week about doing the right thing and being the right person. I'm not getting paid for it, man. And I'm not going to be the person that says, I'm going to just talk about it. I'm going to do it, and I've done it, and I'm going to continue to do it. And that kind of just summarizes who I am, that I'm going to find something to do to help people so that when I'm in that casket on a stage someday and people walk by, they're going to say, this cat changed my life. He made my life better. He helped me when I needed something, when nobody else was there to do it. And I'm not some self-righteous goody-goody that's out to give charity to the world. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be here if someone didn't do that for me. And I've got a list of people that I can never thank, and martial arts is on that list, that I can never thank and pay back for everything that I have, for the beautiful family that I have, for the house that I have, and the car that I have, and the restaurant that I own, and the gym that I own. I can never thank enough people and the sport of mixed martial arts for everything that I have. So now it's my time that I have to give that back. I got to give it back. So that's who I am.